Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Akil and joining me today is Marcel de Vries, Global Managing Director and CTO of Xebia Microsoft Solutions. There's many golden nuggets this episode, all about leadership in tech. Starting with a strong belief that leadership in tech should be technical in the first place. We go into the leadership qualities and skills that are there, that should be there, and that you can cultivate yourself. Marcel shares what leadership looks like when times are rough, and he shares his hiring process. No lead code, no system design, but a 5-day assignment. And it's actually working wonders for him. Enjoy. You really keep up to date. That's something that I saw, first on your LinkedIn, but also in our conversation prior. You mentioned that technical leaders really need to be technical. That's a strong belief of yours.
Yeah.
In practice, that's not always what I've seen.
No, not at all. No. And I think that's where you can excel as a leader. Is by staying current all the time. So I get anxious when my Visual Studio is 2 updates behind. For example.
Really?
Marcel, you have not been spending enough time with code.
Yeah.
That's also why I like the designation. The people have CEO is I think a coding executive officer, right?
Yeah. I love the hands-on part. For me, the strange part is in practice, I've seen people that say then, okay, I've been people manager for let's say 10, 15 years, but before that I was developer. Yeah. And for me, that reference period of 10, 15 years before that you're a developer, it's like, it might be because I'm young, but that's like you're a dinosaur basically. It was a different age 10, 15 years ago versus the technologies that we use nowadays. Yeah. And in some conversations, it's like, there's no common ground that we have on our way of working. Not anymore. It's gone. It's deprecated.
No, and that's why you see also, I think in our industry, people have the tendency to say the path is you go from software developer to more like perhaps software architect or lead software developer. And then you go to a leadership role or a manager role, which I think is quite different. But and then you see that people say, well, I don't need to be technical anymore. I think that's where you miss the boat and where you probably become a manager. And when you stay current and still can give perspectives that others see differently, then all of a sudden you become a leader because you give a different perspective, a different vision, and people go, oh, wow, I can learn from this person, or I want to follow that person. And then you become a leader when they want to follow you.
Yeah. Yeah, for my personal career, I have a few options, let's say. First of all, I'm very curious, innately as a person, which also is very hard when I think about my career because I want to try a lot of things. Now I'm lucky that I'm at a consultancy at Xebia, so last year I've done my first year as product manager.
All right.
Coming from a software engineering background, that was an option, and I took it because it was always something I wanted to try out. And I really like it, and now I can see, let's say, the pros and the cons, because I've been very hands-off compared to previous years, and that's something I genuinely miss. Yeah. And then I was thinking, okay, I like the people aspect. I like the part of personal development. Yeah. I think I'm a good communicator. The podcast helps with that, and it's like a continuous development there. So I was thinking of an engineering manager, but then I also don't want to become a middle manager. I don't want to lose that technical aspect of the role. And that's sometimes what I see in organizations is that it's so hierarchical that there's this layer of middle management, and I don't want to be there. So I wonder what a good, let's say, transition is from an engineering background into a more leadership position.
Yeah, and I think it's not about the title. It's more about your behavior.
Yeah.
I think your behavior will define if you become a leader or if you will become middle management. And that has to do with the fact that you say, I either going to manage my team to adhere to rules, policies, and how it should be done, and I'm going to scrutinize them based on the KPIs that I've been given. Or you say, well, what can I do to accelerate this department or have a different perspective on how we can build a better product? And then you start becoming the person that people like, oh, I want to learn from him, or I want to follow him, or I want to go with that perspective. And then all of a sudden, you are going to challenge the people that set the policies and that set the guidelines and set the KPIs, because you then become actually the leader in where you want to go. And I think that a lot of people, when they say, I want to have a leadership role, don't have a clear perspective on what that entails.
Okay.
And it's often like, now I'm the one that's going to tell people what to do. Yeah. But actually, I believe you should never tell people what to do. You would ask them to follow you where you want to go with them. And I think that's a profound difference in approach, and also a profound difference in people wanting to work with you and for you.
I can see that. I'm very curious, how was that for yourself? Because you started out with a hands-on role.
Yeah.
Now you've been in a leadership position for a long, long time. But there was this transition period where I don't even know if it was a natural growth or it was something you had an ambition for. How was that transition for you?
Well, I've been in the industry for quite a while. So I started as a software developer. I'm an electrical engineer. I never did anything with electrical engineering, but I did do a lot of math. And then I thought, I'm fed up with that now. Let's do coding. Started as a software developer. And when I was as a software developer, I got asked to become a teacher.
Okay.
And that already gave me a different way and a different perspective on how to deal with a lot of people, a lot of questions. And then already you see that your students are following you because you have a story to tell, or you bring them along a journey. You're actually skilling them up. And you see that people like that and then want to follow you. So then from that position as more like a trainer, I became an architect. And in my architect role, I used a lot of the traits that I learned as a trainer in convincing people. Because a lot of, especially technical people have one way to convince people. It's like, I give you the facts speak for themselves, and now you go do.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how people work.
No.
You can bring a lot of facts, but you can have different interpretations and different ways of looking at things. And it is very important to convey the context in which you interpret the information to actually set a path forward. And I think that's one of the things that you learn as a teacher, is bring people on a learning path and then see what you see. And then based on what you see, you can then bring them forward. And that's one of the things I used a lot as an architect is, if I look at this problem, there are multiple ways to solving this. I always gave them also different perspectives. But then I say, well, given the current context and where we want to go and some more business goals, I think that this would be the direction to go. And I've always been also on the collaborative side. It's not like my way or the highway. It's always been like, well, I'm always open to other people's perspectives because I don't think I'm a know-it-all. I'm rather a learn-it-all. I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe in the collective. And I also strongly believe is that as a leader, you need to pick out the best traits in the people and make that shine instead of constantly focusing on what they can do. And that really makes it that you can foster people and grow people in your organization. And then I was an architect, and then I finally got the phone call from Xebia, can you start a business? And my dad always had this idea that he wanted to have a business and run a business, and he actually did it. And that was the reason we moved to where I live nowadays. And he stopped doing that after 5 years.
Okay.
But he always still had that urge to run his own business. And what I learned over time is that in my role as an architect and my role in the past organizations was that I was hitting that ceiling of, well, this is where I think we should go with the business. This is where we should go with where we want to be in the market. This is the type of work we want to do for our customers. And this is where I see that the future is going. Then the opportunity came to me when I got the phone call from Xebia, and they said, well, Marcel, we would like to start a Microsoft business. Would you be willing to spearhead that?
Yeah.
And then my first point was, I have no idea how to run a business.
It's a big ask.
I have no freaking clue how to do it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the nice things with Xebia. They have always fostered that. It was, well, you know tech, you lead the way with tech, and then we will learn you how to run a business. And that is, by the way, at Xebia, we throw you in the in the swimming pool and you start to swim, and then we will say that you need to adjust your swimming a little bit. And that's the way I learned how to build a business, run a business, hire the right people, and based on that, actually try to build what we've built today with now 160 consultants worldwide.
Incredible.
Which is quite incredible if you see that in a 10-year trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I mean, one of the things that you highlighted also reels back into the leadership behaviors, right? That flexibility and perspective and kind of the communication skills to have people buy into whatever you're selling. Buying and selling might not be the best terminology, but from an architecture standpoint, I've had conversations where people first gave me a green light for something that was very simple that we drew up. And then all of a sudden, the next conversation, that same person was there, their manager was there, and they're all of a sudden like, we're not okay with this because it needs to be more future-proof for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And I was like you completely lost me. And I can really push back on that, but it was like, it's a losing battle. Like this organization, too hierarchical, they have too much power. So it's like, okay, we'll future-proof it a little bit more.
Yeah.
We'll shave off some things here and there. But I don't think that's a good way of looking at it, right? Being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, having that empathy and that flexibility,
right.
having a dialogue and let's say a shared good outcome. I think that's definitely a quality that I want to see in the people that I work with, regardless of their stature and position in the company.
Yeah, and I think where you really hit the nail, I think, on the head is moving yourself into the position of the other and then see it from their perspective. Because also within Xebia, when I started our business, we started small. And I was always like, let's not grow too fast and not too big.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was very ambitious. I wanted to do more and bigger and greater. But it was all about, do we do the right assignments and the cool assignments, and that's where we want to go. But then I never took the perspective of the founders of Xebia. They said, Marcel, you really need to grow further before you can have a stable business. But I was more like, no, I want to keep it small. 35 people is more than enough. We want to keep it fun and family-like. But the fact that when you scale a little bit beyond these numbers and you see it then from their perspective, you're like, you create a more stable business. It's less volatile. You can incur more hits that come in from like a customer that all of a sudden say, well, we don't need your services anymore. And then not taking a real hit all of a sudden while because of that, you cannot pay bonuses or something. So I learned over time that moving to the position of the other perspective really helps you then build also a narrative for what does that mean for your leadership? What does it mean for you to then set a new dotted line for your team to follow you again? Because they shifted perspective, they changed the perspective in which you were doing something. And now you need to take your team along a ride again. It's like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. There are some new constraints in the system. Yeah. And based on the new constraints, you can then see where the path should lead to now. And then if you show them that, first of all, there's a change in perspective. Because if you only communicate, we're going to do it differently, everybody goes like, why? Yeah. And that is all has to do with change and change processes, of course. It's like you first need to make sure that everybody understands, why do we need to change? Why do we need to do it differently? And then from there, take on the other trajectory. Yeah. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Adler model, for example, but that's very well described also in these kind of models where they say, well, this is one of the first steps that you need to take. So make everybody aware of the need for the change. Otherwise, nobody will change. And those are very important things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with the model, but for me, from a software engineering hat, that's why I wanted to do product management, because I was always in the position of, okay, there's change. And I know we can do a lot of things, especially with a backlog that has millions of items that never get picked up. I'm like, okay, why are we doing this? Right? Why does this have the most value? Because probably deep down, I have a different opinion, or I have an opinion in the first place, and it might not be what we're doing. So I want to understand from, again, that curiosity perspective. And sometimes I wasn't always happy with that dialogue, right? I was either lost, or I didn't really understand, but I was responsible for executing, which is also not really a position that I like too much. So then I thought, okay, having the responsibilities also within an organization, I can at least do justice to the question of why, right? Because I know we can do many things, and I know there's low-hanging fruit, I know there's a long-term vision, but at the end, the product manager is responsible for the product and also the decisions on why we do things in order. That's why I took up that mantle. And I really have enjoyed it. Kind of communicating and figuring things out from scratch. Like you, I had never done this before. There were many unknowns, but I strongly believe that whenever you're in a leadership position, and I feel like in this organization, product management is also a type of leadership position, kind of the people in your team also look up to you, and their behavior is also going to reflect your behavior, right? If a failure happens and you look the other way, or you discredit it, or you don't look at it and you don't explain it, or you hide away from it, that's the behavior you're going to see also within that organization or within that team.
And one of the other things where you can really lose people is that you still stay in your old role while you have the new role. So for example, you come from a technical background, now you become a product owner. Now, are you going to say, this is where we would like to go and this is what the things that we want to achieve? Or are you going to say, well, this is the way you need to code it.
This is how we do it.
This is how we do it. And that is where some people also need to make a real shift in, how do you move from I'm now an engineer to now I'm leading a team and I want a team to engineer the solution.
Yeah.
Well, you can still ask questions, but you should not dictate all of a sudden the technical solution, because otherwise you're the engineer again, right? And that's where people find it really hard to then detach from the old role while they take a leadership role.
Absolutely. Yeah. I genuinely, on the surface level, I understand what you mean. And I'm like, I can do that. But there was this one instance in refinement, and we're talking about database schema migrations, and I have a strong opinion. And all of a sudden I was like, but I don't have to have a strong opinion. Like, I can challenge, I can understand, but it's not my decision to figure out how we do this.
Yeah.
It's the team's decision, and I trust the team to execute. That's it.
Yeah.
And that realization, I was like, yeah, I'm either too deep in this technical conversation. I was like, I'm sorry. I genuinely paused and said, I'm sorry. I should not be having this conversation. I'm curious and I have an opinion, but in the end, it's your decision. And I thought that was very empowering at the end.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to do from a surface level.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
You will find yourself in those situations.
Yeah. No, it's really hard.
Yeah. Have you ever find yourself in a circumstance like that? Because you mentioned you were all of a sudden responsible for growing an organization, genuinely building a business, and you had a technical background, and you admitted it's not something you've done before.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and where I misstepped many times. I mean, especially when you start a consulting business, the first thing you do is you start consulting. And I was one of the first consultants that went out to customers. Yeah. But I was also like, okay, but I'm also the founder. I'm also the CTO. How do you combine these things? It's really hard sometimes. And then the first thing that I learned, and I really had help from some of the great people in our team to make that happen, is, well, the first things that we learned is, well, let's hire the people that we look up to again, where we can learn from. Because that gives you also, I think, the trust that you can let others do it.
Yeah.
And that's why we created this whole framework around how do we hire people. And it's a 5-day assessment, and it's not you're not just hired by a few interviews. And that has to do with the fact that we thought, well, it also, when everybody passes that bar, gives others the perspective like, okay, they passed the bar. So they get an immediate trust relationship. And those are the things that we learned over time that really work well in creating a high-performing team. Yeah. Now, of course, one of the things that I really misstepped myself in the past was hire for what you can afford instead of hire for what you need. And those one of the things that you learn when you build a business is that, well, I have this kind of a budget available. I would like to do some marketing. What can I afford? And then you go look for somebody with a role that fits in the bucket of money that you have. But actually, I needed somebody that was way more mature, way better at what they can do in marketing. And I should have hired for actually what we need as a company. And that's where you then need to make investment calls, actually say, well, this is an investment. We really need to earn that back, but this is the way we should do it. And because of that, in the past I had some bad hires, and I had some very hard conversations with people after the fact, where I think, and I take it on me, that it was not the right person for what we needed. Because I did wrong hiring, I think, with the wrong perspective and wrong starting point.
Yeah, hiring someone you can look up to sounds like a very powerful phrase to me, and it's different. I think it's more of a new age thinking, right? Because traditionally, if you're really good at what you do, maybe even outside of tech, you grow into a leadership position, right? And you get there by virtue of being better, maybe in communication, or being better at a skill set than your colleagues, right? That's how you rise to the occasion. That's how you get that leadership position. So then if you've risen to, let's say, the top of the top, it's very difficult to then hire someone that you can look up to, right? Because otherwise, why would you be in that position of leadership? Yeah,
and I think that's one of the things also over time that I learned is fear is the worst way of judging. So if you fear for your job because you hire people that are better than you, then there's something profoundly different in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that when I find somebody that can do my job in a much better way, I need to step aside because it's better for the greater good.
Yeah.
And I can find a job any day, anywhere where I want, I think. And if you don't have that confidence, then you also have an issue, I think, if you are part of a leadership team. So building up that confidence, also... Well, I think the strategy in hiring constant people that you look up to and think, well, they bring something that I don't have, and that's where I can then make a better organization, a better group. Also gives you more confidence in your own position.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and That's also one of the things that I think people that want to become part of leadership think that they need to know everything or they need to be able to do everything. And that's absolutely not true. The only thing that you actually need to be good at is leading the group and hiring the right people to do the specific tasks that need to be done.
Yeah.
And it is nice if you know what they're doing. But if you're constantly micromanaging and micro-checking what they're doing, then something is wrong. Because probably you don't have the trust relationship with the people that you hired.
Yeah.
And that's why trust is really the foundational part of this. And that's also the trust in your own role, the trust in and the faith that you have in what you want to build.
Yeah. From what I've seen in leadership positions, I think we've been very fortunate that COVID happened. It had a lot of downsides, but from a trust and remote working perspective, like it increased a lot of flexibility. I've gone to many cities abroad, worked from there for a month, actually lived my life living somewhere else. And I didn't have to quit my job. I had the flexibility to do everything. And I want to be able to do that, the flexibility.
Yeah.
But it's not what I've seen. Bigger companies are going back to the office. Minimum mandatory 3-day policies are now back.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with control. It has a lot to do with trust. And I'm not sure if it's a leadership failure, but it is definitely a pattern that I've seen.
Well, there are a couple of things there. If you look at, for example, going back to the office, there are two approaches you can take. And what you see is a manager will take the approach, you need to go to the office at least 2 days a week. You set a policy, you set a rule.
Period.
Yeah. What we have done is we never set that rule. But what we do is we say, well, let's work based on the fact of FOMO, the fear of missing out. Make it that people want to be in the office because there's something you get from being in the office. And then you need to have a look at why are we in the office? We are not in the office to do Teams calls. We're not in the office to write a document. We're in the office to collaborate, to learn from each other, to share knowledge, to make decisions together. So it should be about the social aspect when you are at the office and not about creating more phone booths for people to take Teams calls. So one of the things that we really try to do is say, well, let's create the fear of FOMO. And now people want to come. And you see that our office is always busy. Because people want to be there, because when people want to be there, they want to exchange information, they want to exchange ideas. You can just say, hey, can you help me out here? And just have a whiteboard session with each other. Well, with Teams, there's still the barrier of, I need to call him and is he available? And often we don't dare to call and just get a decline of the call. No, we're first going to fiddle with the agenda. Is he available? Yes or no? Or is she available? Yes or no? It's like, there seems to be a barrier to do the call, while somebody sitting next to you says, hey, can you help me out? That is so much easier and much easier in the social interaction. So I see that organizations where you see a policy of we need to be in the office at least 2 days a week because that's now become a metric, that's where you have managers in charge.
Okay.
And I think that there are other ways to make people use the office for the better good. And if everybody agrees that we really don't need to have an office, then heaven forbid, get rid of the office. I mean, it's not a goal to be at the office, right? That's often what you see as well, is that the things that we have become all of a sudden a goal. It's like, no, it's not a goal to be agile. It's not a goal to do microservices. It's a goal to get somewhere, and we use means to that. And an office can be a mean to actually collaborate in a better environment with each other.
Yeah, I love that you highlight it's a means to an end.
Yeah.
And like I've heard many stories where people say, I come to the office and it's the only social interaction we have. I actually don't do any work when I go to the office, but like they have new inspirational energy.
Yes.
And I think that's a very important fact. It doesn't have to be a forced fact. Like it can be natural and it can be from the ground up rather than from top down.
Yeah. And I've seen different companies act differently, right? So one of the companies that I'm also a Pluralsight author, so go to Pluralsight sometimes, and they call it like energy hubs.
Okay.
And you see that people go to the office to tank new energy of the social interactions. And you see that different organizations have different perspectives on why you should use the office. And what I've done with the organization, the Microsoft service line with Xebia is our USA team is completely remote. But our Dutch team is a lot in the office here in Hilversum. while our German team is completely remote again. So we have different models, and there are complete different ways to actually make that work, which is sometimes quite hard, I can tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah,
I was thinking back to kind of this topic that we have of leadership in tech, specifically how people can grow towards leadership positions, right? Not necessarily from a title perspective, but I do think that even when leadership qualities are distributed within a team, maybe you don't need as many middle managers. You still need people at the end that are going to make the decisions, right? That people are going to look up to, and at the end of the day, trust in that decision-making part of the business, I would say as well. How can you grow to a role like that? Because for me, if I look towards my experience, I don't think I'm ever going to be comfortable jumping in a position like that. There will never be a point where I say, now's the time. Yet I do feel like it's something I would like to do.
I think there are two perspectives here. So the one perspective is the organizational perspective. Can I get into a role where I have officially the title of manager or leader? But there's always the route you can take, no matter what, to take lead in your personal development and be your own personal leader. Lead yourself. Know where you want to go. Set some goals for yourself. Move to those goals. Have your aspirations and wonder about your aspirations, and also reset them sometimes, and really move yourself to these goalposts that you set yourself. I recently had somebody ask me like, I really would like to become a leader in the company. It's like, okay, that's cool. Can you tell me what it entails? What is it that you would like to do? And the answer is, I have no idea. Yeah. And then my response, my natural response, and probably not always the most nicest response, is then, how can you ask for moving into a leadership position if you have no idea what that means, because you have not taken leadership in your own thought process and not even thought about where you want to go yourself? What does it entail? Is it about then higher pay, another title? Because that is the wrong driver to want to go to a leadership position. Yeah, I think you will be burned out within no time. I sometimes say to people that one of my biggest jobs is being the shit umbrella for everybody, because there's a lot of stuff you need to deal with that you need to be willing to do in order to lead a group. And that is not always so great that I can make a decision, because when COVID struck, on Friday evening, we heard that COVID meant that everybody was in a lockdown. Oh, yeah. How do you deal with that? You have no information whatsoever. And you know that the customers on Monday are calling you. Yeah, you're getting like, what was it? I think back in the days, we were around 30 people and we got 15 people back in one day. For a consulting business, it's like hell. That's like devastating. Right? You have no idea. What are the data points that you can navigate on? You have no clue what's going to happen. Now you're in the role and you make decisions. Yeah, all eyes on you. Yeah. Are you going to fire people? Are you going to, what are the things that you are going to make happen in order to pay salaries and ensure that you have a longevity of the company? And that's also the moment you need to make tough decisions. People that were on the verge of, for example, starting, saying, sorry, it's your probation time, but it's not a good time. It's not a good time to start. Yeah, but I just finished my 15-year job role and you really asked me to become part of this company. So, but tough times, we now need to make another decision, and tough luck. Yeah. And that is what people often don't see when you're in a leadership position. That's also where you need to take action and then need to take the call. And then don't go and say like, I had to do it because of, and then come with all kinds of reasons. No, you just had to make a tough call. And yes, you made a decision, and that decision that you made might be devastating for that person. But for the greater good of the company, it was something that needed to be done. Yeah. And that's often the perspective people don't see when they ask for a leadership position or they want to become a manager. Is like, that is also part of that work. And you really need to have something, I would say, in your DNA of the willingness of people following you like naturally. Then it will come naturally also to make tough decisions sometimes. It will be hard the first time, and it will grow on you eventually. But I think that is one of the first things you need to get in check with yourself. Do you really want to lead? Or do you want to higher pay, another title or whatever, which is also good, but then probably you're better off finding an individual contributor role in an organization and not leading others, because that will be very tough on the people that you lead.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important to highlight that leadership really matters where times are tough, right? When everything is fine and dandy, it looks like a beautiful role.
Oh, it's a beautiful role.
It's a smooth operation.
Yes.
Yeah. But the situation you described is not something you can simulate or train for, and it's people's lives, their livelihoods, and it's indeed it's a common interest, the greater good.
Yeah.
And you have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? Do you decide, reflect, evaluate, trust your people around you? Do you have a strong gut feeling?
Well, first of all, so people that I had to let go of, which is the nice way of firing, right?
Yeah.
I had to let go of people. That's I learned that in the US. That's the way you sugarcoat things. It's like,
that's what they
we
do
have
in the
to
US.
let you go, but actually you need to fire people. It's like even some of the people are still my best friends.
Wow.
And that has to do with the fact that on a personal level, you still can make the connect and take people along your decision-making process. And then also detaching the fact that as a person, I still love you as a person. I would really love to work with you. But given the business context and all the other variables that are in play, this is the decision that I needed to make. That is not because you are a bad person or you didn't perform well, but the role was all of a sudden obsolete. And I cannot make it more beautiful than that.
Yeah.
And then facing those brutal facts and don't come up with all kinds of bullshit on why you need to let go or place the decision making to I had to make a decision because of somebody else. No, it's you made a decision.
It's your call.
It's your call.
Yeah.
And owning up to that is, I think, crucial in leadership. Owning up to your decisions, but also owning up to your mistakes. If you make mistakes, own up to it, man. I mean, you made a mistake. And you need to either fix it or just come clean with this. Like, I made my decision based on these things, and I did not make the right decision. But better a decision than no decision.
Yeah, absolutely. This honesty and integrity, it's something you have. I think it's something you can probably try and fix and try and get better at. But it's also definitely something what you have. Something the way you were raised, the fundamentals that your parents or your environment instilled in you. It's something you have.
Yeah.
And the people that you still are friends with, probably they can see it from a logical perspective, right?
Absolutely.
Because these are the facts, right? Situation happens, environments change, new reality, and decisions have to be made. People that get a bit more emotional, that's probably where it gets more tough, but that's also the human side, right? There are a lot of emotions at play when it comes to people's lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things I really like about leading a company is that leading based on trust. That is what I'm. That's one of the things that I would hold to my way of leadership is I really trust people a lot. Yeah, and I hate to only govern by data. Because what I often see is, we're a data-driven company, and then I go like, so how do we get to the data? We need that make people register everything in systems. Like, okay, so now we're back into an environment where everybody needs to register everything, and we need to measure everything, but what you measure is what you get. Yeah. So actually, you're making up your own data and making decisions made on the made-up data that comes out of those systems, because what you steer on is what you get in the data. So that's what I sometimes really have a hard time on, especially when companies are growing. It's more about, let us have a look at the data, and then but we didn't measure that. Let's start measuring that, and then people are not stupid. They know that absolutely. They know that if you start registering certain data points, like there's probably an important part. Yeah, and I better register the data in my favor. And then all of a sudden your data is skewed because you didn't know that measuring the system is already influencing the system. So that's some of the things that's why I like to build on trust. And if you read books like Lencioni, and they have about the triangle that starts with trust is the foundation, and you can build great teams based on trust. I have never seen high performance team triangles based on data. It's always been a trust, and that's where you meet as humans, and then from there on build a culture within the company and really become high performant with each other. Yeah,
it's funny because when we talked about remote working, one of the arguments that I've seen online is like, okay, people that work remote, you have no clue what they're doing, if they're even being productive. If they're in the office, at least you can see that, right? It's a micromanaging behavior. That's why when I asked, I thought it was noteworthy that you didn't even consider the difference in way of working, because you have a trust that whatever this person that you've hired, you trust them, wherever they work, they're going to work, right? They're going to be as productive or in a different way, differently productive. Maybe they go out for a walk more when they're home. Who cares? As long as you have that trust in them, they're there to execute. That's the relationship.
And the thing is, and especially in engineering, I think that I love it when people go out for a walk with their dog, because then they are probably very mentally productive.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something you cannot measure in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that I am big at is like, what are the outcomes? You promise me something, then you get to the outcome. I don't care if you go walk the dog or go out to a restaurant and eat with your wife or whatever while at work, but then don't come to me like I didn't finish what I promised you. And sometimes you probably need to make some additional hours to finish the work that you promised, but what you promise is what you deliver. So it's always about, say what you do and do what you say. And that is the foundational trust level that you need to have with everybody. And I think that your hiring process is really, really instrumental to make that successful.
What are some of the learnings that you can share from that hiring process to make sure that it's actually key and it's benefiting you the way you want it to?
Well, I can share, for example, let me start with our assessment process is 5 days. So you get 5 days, you get an assignment. It's a very open-ended assignment which we give people.
On purpose?
Yeah, on purpose, because it confuses the hell out of people. And what we ask them to do is behave as you would behave when you work with a customer. So we are your customer, ask questions. So the assessment starts the moment they receive the document. And first, of course, we ask, well, can you let us know if you received the document and are there any questions? And normally there are no questions.
Okay.
Why? Because people hate to ask questions the moment they get the document. Well, I need to read it again and again and again and again and again. And it's like, I have no idea what to do. It's like, yeah, that's correct. You need to ask questions. And that's where we already sift out certain behaviors. Are you going to circle around, never ask questions, and then come up with your own ideas?
Yeah, assumptions.
All the assumptions which you then build on, and then after 5 days, and you don't need to spend 5 days. It's about 15 hours or so that you need to spend, and you should be good. But then at the assessment day itself, what we ask you to do is first pitch to us who you are. But we're not asking about your resume. Who are you? It's a very different question that we ask, because we know your resume, we know your LinkedIn profile, we know what you've done.
Yeah.
But who are you as a person? What is it that you will bring to our group? And then we ask you to pitch to the customer your solution.
Okay.
And we are then the customer again. So pitch it to us and then see if you made us happy with your solution. And the funny thing is that if people don't ask any questions during the process, for example, they make the assumption we're doing Microsoft, so we're going to use Azure. And then we go, oh yeah, but we just made an investment of $3.5 million in our data center. We're not going to the cloud. Our CEO is really not into the cloud. We're not going to do it. And people go like,
yeah, oops.
Now, and then that's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's more about how do you respond to it?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Is it like owning up to your mistakes? Like I made assumptions, and so there's so much you can learn from there on people behavior. And this is where we then actually make the most of the decision making about would we like to work with somebody is on that personal behavior, owning up to what your decisions were that you made, saying that to be honest, I have no idea. Let's figure it out together. And then we're also really like playful. It's like, oh yeah, let's figure it out together. Let's Google it. Let's see what comes out of that. But then we also see your skills in getting to the right answer or to an answer that would satisfy us.
Yeah.
And the things that we learned is, especially when there's more pressure on the system that we need to hire faster or we need to have more people because we just have two amazing customers. We really need to have people for them. And normally, by the way, we hire for talent and not for assignments. But we have an assignment. We really need to have that position filled. And then you see that you become sloppy in the decision-making process because you have this great deal. And that's where if I look back to the 160 people that we now hired, of course, we also made some bad decisions here and there. And what I've seen is that especially when the pressure was on we really need to fulfill that position, then mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Well, when you have the comfort of saying, well, I'm only hiring for talent, and then the assignments will follow, and we will find the right assignments for those people, and we have enough cash in the bank to still pay the people when they're not in an assignment. That was when we did the best hiring, and we got the best talent in. And also, talented people that are not full of themselves. Like one of those things you see often is that when people accomplish things in our community, great, you wrote a great blog or you created a great open source component, but then all of a sudden we become cocky about it. It's like, oh, but I'm this great open source guru or whatever. Then we already see that will never be a fit in our team because we have so many amazing, talented people. But if I would ask the question, who has imposter syndrome in our team, I would say 80 or 90%.
Yeah.
Because we all think like there's so much more to know. We don't know everything. So who am I to know this, right? And yeah, saying no to I really don't know, let's figure it out together is a much better trait than going and give me all kinds of bogus answers that are not leading to something. And sifting that out is really crucial in creating the trust triangle.
I can see that. Like that hiring process, how you described it, it's different from the traditional lead code, system design, and then a one-on-one conversation team fit. Because it actually tests your leadership skills, right? Exactly. If you own up to a mistake or you make a few assumptions, see how you react. And there's no good or wrong. It's not black and white. It's just a thing that happened and will happen in the future. Yeah. So we see how you react to that. It's a way of working, right? You get a problem which is completely unknown, and it's funny that it's unknown on purpose. Yes. But how do you react to that? How do you manage having a conversation, or who are you in the first place, right? Because we need to connect on a personal level before we can excel on a business level.
And I need consultants that are very curious and start asking questions and like, oh, but this is the perspective I have now. Is that correct, or did I miss something? And the funny thing is that if people ask the right, some of the good questions, I would say, they get a lot out of us, and they go like, oh, but the problem is not a tech problem at all. It's more about this or that. It's like, figuring that out is really for us sifting out the amazing consultants and we have the good consultants, and then we have the people that don't make the cut.
I wonder how it would work in other organizations, let's say in product companies, because I've also seen people that excel at lead code, excel at system design, but are just an asshole to work with. And sometimes in companies, it can be seen as a necessary evil. Like I have an opinion on that, but it's just the thing that has happened. And I don't think that would work in a consultancy as well as it works in a product company necessarily. So then would this approach work there as well?
Well, first of all, this approach is very expensive.
Yeah.
So there's no appetite whatsoever of companies doing that. And I get a lot of asks from our own CEO if I can do it more efficient. Because he's like,
time is money.
Marcel, this is costing a lot of money. So I know, but it gives me a very good group to work with. We have consulted at companies where we helped them move to a different model, where it was a governmental environment where we really wanted to have a different hiring process in place. But what you see is that the way the recruitment business works, how HR works, these processes that are, I would say, common knowledge, don't foster this approach at all. And actually you get asked anytime when you want to do something like this, like Marcel, it's going to cost way too much time, and probably you will never find the person that you're looking for because you're so critical about all these points. Like, I know, but I rather not hire than mishire, because mishiring throws a monkey wrench in your whole system, in your whole ecosystem, in your whole culture of the company that you built. And making that change is really hard. And you need to have some people in leadership that are in the same mindset and think that is also a good idea. And you rather grow slow or fulfill the position slowly with high quality, then you go like bang, 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 bang. I need to have these people in hire, fire, hire, fire, hire, fire. What you see often in a lot of companies is like people stay there for a year and they are gone, 2 years. And it's also good to see in the resumes of certain people, it's like, oh, you stay there every time, a year and a half, 2 years. Like, you have a hard, you have a difficulty on attaching somewhere and finding a good spot.
Yeah, exactly. Don't stick.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that like there's this angle of costs, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's because it's the Netherlands, but I've heard this term before, indeed, that a mishire is going to be one of the most expensive things, right? Because one rotten apple is going to infect the other, like it's going to impact the team atmosphere.
Yeah, but monetary, you cannot express it that easily. So what you see is that from a monetary perspective, it's very easy to say, well, hire fire is much, much cheaper. But what is happening on your culture and your group behavior it's very hard to make it tangible, but you can see it. You can see it, you can feel it, and like you say, you have some of the assholes calling the shots. That is very hard to work with. And we also, we actually in our journey of more than 10 years, we even had a couple of customers that we fired because they had just people that were so difficult to work with because they were the know-it-all. It was all like they say it should be done. But you hired us as a consultant to give you guidance, and now it needs to be done like this. Then you hired the wrong company. So then find somebody that is doing staff aug and not consulting, right? And then we had a conversation with customers like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I can see that. I was also wondering, because this hiring process kind of defines and at least shows the leadership qualities that you look for, if it's going to be more common practice in the future. Because with AI, more common knowledge, stuff like lead code exercises, system design, people can train for more and more easily, right? That's going to become common knowledge at some point. But you will always have this interpersonal communication. You will always work with other people. So then the leadership qualities, your flexibility of mindset, empathy is going to be more and more important. I'm wondering if we will, even though it's going to be more cost efficient to do it another way, if we need to hire based on those interpersonal skills in the first place.
Well, I think that interpersonal becomes, I would say, the new currency of us humans, because a lot of the work will be taken over by AI, I think, especially in our industry. In my perspective, we'll be coding in English in about 5 to 10 years, and there's no C# and Java and anything more. We'll just specify applications. So there will be a huge change in that aspect. And then also what you say is like, all those exercises that you need to do, what you probably will get is that it's more stricter. You're not allowed to use AI. You're not allowed to whatever. But I think it's a stupid idea because actually in real life you work with that stuff because it makes you more productive and it just works for you. And let's be honest, it's not a goal to write code. It's a goal to get an application. And again, a goal versus where you need to go what you're doing, it should never be reversed. And always keep the goal in mind. And then based on the goal, you can change your means to get there.
I can see that. It's similar to how I would now do an exercise and not be able to use Google at all, even though that's what we do. With AI, I think is going to be similar, right?
And that's what we do in our assessment as well. It's like people go like, "Oh I don't know." So what you do normally?
Yeah,
I would Google it. So Google it and then see what the answer is, right? Yeah. And of course, in the Microsoft search line, we say, bingle it, or. But yeah, no, it is. It's just interesting to see. I see at the moment also in our educational system that we actually have the wrong behavior to the change. I mean, my kids, they love AI. And when they need to write their thesis, then why not use AI to make it perfectly Dutch? Yeah. Because in my perspective, then who gives a rat's ass if you can spell correct? It's about the message you want to convey. So also text is for me a means to a goal. I want to convey a message. And to be honest, I don't care how the letters are on paper as long as you understand what I'm trying to convey as a message. And then it's awesome that you can use AI. And it's really helpful also for a lot of people like me, I'm a dyslexic, to actually get something on paper that people can understand. So,
I can see that. Yeah. I didn't even think of text being kind of a means to an end as well, right? If you're trying to convey an information, thesis is also just a means of an end, more a scientific approach, I would say, or a standardized way scientifically. But in the end, it's about the essence of what you've done, right? Your research, your conclusions, follow-up research, that's all the essence. Yeah. It's funny that we do try and distill it and put it all the way up top in an abstract, but in the end, that's the essence. That's what people are looking for. Yeah. So focus on that.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see. And there's a lot of change coming to us, I think, especially in the AI space. Yeah. And I see a lot of, I would call it turkeys for Christmas that are saying, but AI is not good enough. It's not generating good enough code and those kind of things. And like, Well, one of the questions I ask a lot to my audience is like, okay, when did you last check your compiler on the assembler that it generated? And they go like, probably not.
Never.
No. There you go.
Yeah.
So I think you have the answer there already in terms of, AI will just generate a lot of code for us. And that means that in our industry, we are in for a treat at the moment. There's a lot of change coming. And you better take the lead in that and make every developer AI assisted. And that's the way we approach it in the Microsoft Service line.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's an incredibly exciting time.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's going to be many more in the future, similar to what we have now, right? It's like the beginning of the internet. It's like everything is open specifically. You can do a lot of things. It's just a rat race. And I feel like a lot of companies are in this rat race trying to find the gold. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. I think a lot will change.
And one of the funny things for me is that I have lived through some of those episodes, right? I'm old enough to say, well, when I went to school and when I got my bachelor's degree, there was no internet. So I got it from books, and I needed to program Pascal from a book that had the APIs, and I need to type them over. There was no IDE.
I can't imagine that.
No, but that's where I started. And then you got like the PC on every desk. And I started even before the PCs on every desk, right? And then all of a sudden you got standardization there, and you got things like Windows, which I first thought was a virus, but actually became a mainstream operating system. And from there you see these progressions, but they're really inflection points in our industry. I mean, if you look at where we were in our industry, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and now it's not comparable.
Yeah.
And we constantly have been able to adapt to those changes. So why wouldn't we be able to adapt this time? But it is, of course, important that you as a person say, okay, what does that imply for me? And then take your personal leadership again and say, okay, how am I going to be relevant in the next 5 years in my job role? Because, probably being the best C# developer of this world will not cut it anymore.
Yeah, things are going to change.
Yes.
And I feel like you either indeed are afraid of change or you embrace change. Yeah. I recently had an episode was specifically about AI in product management. And I had my fellow guest was Bandan. And he said in product, specifically in customer service, he sees a big role for AI, right? Because customer problem, look into XYZ system, see what's delayed, why is an order not shipped, maybe solve it, resolve it. It's all things that can be automated, which means that if you're in a position and you're doing customer support, you can be fearful for your job, or you can embrace it. And all of a sudden you're the person that looks at the data, sees what actually happened, brings it to the organization, sees common patterns or faults with the systems, and that's then your role. It changed from being a person that executes, and you're now an orchestrator, an observer,
exactly,
and you make impact in that way.
And that's why I love the name Copilot in some of these products.
It's genius.
It's genius.
Yeah.
Like, it is literally your Copilot, and you take some information from your Copilot, but you still make the decisions yourself. And that will change eventually. But at the moment, that's where we are, I think, in our industry. Yeah,
for sure.
That's cool.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, Marcel. This was a blast in kind of the leadership topics that we talked about with AI at the end as well. Is there anything you missed that you still want to share?
No, thank you. It was a very nice conversation. Thanks for having me. And,
awesome.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you again then. Thanks again for listening as well. If you're still here, let us know in the comments section what you think of this episode. Like if you liked it, and otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.